Hi, I'm Brian Crombie, and we're going to be talking on The Brian Crombie Show. We're going to be talking about politics, arts, business, and social issues on The Brian Crombie Show on Canada One TV. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Show on Canada One TV. I want to introduce you tonight to an absolutely fascinating young lady. Her name is Nika Domi. It's actually not her name, it's her pen name. Her real name is, I think, Dominique or something like that. But because it's a turned upside down world, she turned her name upside down and she used Nika Domi as her name. And she's an author of a fascinating book about social psychology. It's actually called Person to Person, but it is a fascinating book about social psychology. And I wanted to find out what the heck social psychology actually is, how she got to writing this book, and why, and who she thinks the audience is. So, Nika, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So tell me, what is social psychology?
Social psychology is the study of the mental processes that every human has, because we all have a brain, right? And we all have very similar ways in which that brain operates. And that study focuses on how we operate in the social world, in the society that we live in. So humans are social, social creatures. We all know that. We can't really do it on a deserted island by ourselves. And the social psychology study really increases your ability to understand others, to see things from more than one perspective, more from than just our egotistical, single-viewed perspective, to understand how others will operate based on things like their socialization, maybe where they grew up.
So it's understanding others. Is that just empathy?
And yourself too.
Is that just empathy?
Empathy is a concept of social psychology, but empathy is more about how we maybe relate to others, how we care for others, more about the caring and compassion maybe, rather than, social psychology could get quite dark. So it has a scale from, positive to very negative.
Why do you say it's quite dark?
For example, one thing I've learned in the study of social psychology when I was doing my studies at McMaster University recently, and I think that really hit me quite a bit, and I think it hit every student in there, to find out that maybe there isn't really such thing as altruism and true altruism, because what we've learned, and it's really an interesting concept, what we've learned about altruism, which is empathy for others, right, and our desire to help and jump in and maybe save somebody. Yeah, so basically, let's take a concept that I talk about in here, very simple. You want to go, you're on a walk, and there's somebody with a very cute dog. And what people often do is they go up, oh my goodness, what a cute dog this is, right? They want to pet it, they want the dog to like them back. So that is somewhat of an altruistic behavior, because you are showing love to this creature, right? And their owner, and you're showing respect and your admiration for the cuteness. But why are you doing this? So social psychology, when we go deeper into, we kind of uncover all the layers of our mind and our emotions and our past and the way we're created in a way, it shows that it is almost a bit of a selfish thing, because we want the validation even from that dog that it likes us. Now let's say the dog snaps back, right? We're now offended in a way, because now it hurt our ego that, why does this dog not like me, right? So
we only pet a dog because we want the dog to show us love,
to show us some validation
really?
of our value to the world, and our goodness and our good energy. And does this dog maybe sense our good energy? Will it validate that? So it is feeding a little bit of our ego. And it's really interesting concept of that. So when we got into the topic of altruism in the studies at McMaster, that's when these kind of light bulbs hit, and everybody kind of, went into a little bit of a negative vibe, because we realized, are humans capable of that pure, jump in and save someone's life because we want to save that person's life? Or are we jumping in the water, let's say, to save someone's life because we don't want to live the rest of our lives with that regret that we didn't? And so it's really interesting how
So you don't think we
deep
save
it
someone's life to
goes.
save someone's life? We save someone's life so we don't feel bad that we didn't save their life.
That is something that social psychology does study, and it's not really about what I think, because I could tell you what I think, right?
What do you think?
But after
I think we save people's lives to save people's lives.
Right. So there is. I'm like a 50%. Yes, we do have that love
And I think we
for
pet
others.
dogs because we like dogs.
Right.
And it makes us feel good to like
But
dogs.
until we start doing studies in the lab, in the real world, and then they write papers about it, the research has to have validity and reliability, so it's done a few times.
Okay, so I
in the
understand-
research studies, it proves against our wanting to believe in the goodness, right? So it's so much that I've learned how deep things go. And it's just so interesting
So
that
why
the
did
more you
you-
uncover things, the more you learn, the different pieces that come into our behavior.
Why did you want to turn this all into writing a book?
So I spent about 5 years studying at McMaster, studying social psychology. I've also did minor in religious studies. And I've realized that the two were a perfect match to each other, because spirituality and our inner self is very much connected to our mind and how we operate with our emotions and our feelings and how they drive our behavior daily. Very tiny little behaviors are affected by our inner self and the things that hide within the depths of us. So I wanted to okay, so when I was in McMaster, I was realizing things through those years that right now I'm 40-ish, let's say, and I did this study about 3 years ago. I graduated. I realized that in my almost 40-year-old life, I did not know about many of the things that I've learned in this study of
And you
social
wanted
psychology.
to convey that to other people.
Even though I grew up in two different sides of the world, so I have a Polish accent, right? So I grew up in Poland until I was 12, and then I moved to Canada. So I have a perspective from two different sides of the world when it comes to social interactions and, politics and so many different things. But until I went into this study, I realized that I really didn't know much about not only my mind, not only about other people, their behavior, the root causes of their behavior, about society and group behavior, influence, social influence and mental influence and things like that. So I wanted to bring the basics of what I've learned to the public. Because there's so many amazing studies out there. There's research papers that are just brilliant and gems of information that we could all use to improve society. But they are almost hidden in the buildings of universities, and they are,
Academics have this problem of not conveying their information to people
Exactly.
as well as
So
as often as they should, no question.
That is exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to put the most basics of social psychology into this book, and as fat as it
Called
appears,
Person to Person.
Yes.
And where can one get this book?
you can purchase it on Amazon, and it's definitely just search by the name Person to Person and the author Nika Domi. Or you can contact me on Instagram. You can go to my website, nikadomi.com, and find it there. So I live in the Toronto area. If somebody is interested in a consultation, psychology, spiritual consultation, I can bring them the book. So I'm very friendly. So please hit me up anywhere on social media, and we could talk.
Well, fantastic. I look forward to learning more about it. We're going to take a break for some messages. And I'm going to ask you when I come back, who's this written for? Mm-hmm. Who should be the reader of it? And what are the key lessons that they're going to take from it? Is that okay?
Stay tuned for the gems.
Excellent. Well, we'll be back in just 2 minutes with Nika Domi. Person to Person is her book. Stay with us. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Show on Canada One TV. We're chatting tonight about social psychology with Nika Domi, who has written a book called Person to Person. Someone who has studied the topic and felt compelled to spend some time actually writing the book. And Nika, how long did it take you to write the book?
It took me around 2 years, but
2 years.
I said no to every friend. I said, no, I cannot come out tonight. I am writing my book. And as much as procrastination always kind of finds its way into the process, I found that even procrastination is purposeful because it allowed my mind to kind of get into the mode of getting the right ideas in.
Yep.
So it took me about 2 years, and that was actually with the help of the publisher, Raymond Aaron, who is actually a Toronto resident, and he is part of the Secret, and I'm sure everybody heard of the movie The Law of Attraction, so he is from that crowd, and he has a program where again, not to get into it, but spirituality and synchronicities and things like that have led me to Raymond, and to make a very quick decision on the spot to sign up to his program, which kept me on track.
Right.
And it gave me this push where I had something over me. I had a deadline. I was actually supposed to finish this way earlier than 2 years, but I didn't follow the rules, and I made it way too big, and I kept going, and I had to cut down a lot of things. It turned out to be an almost 400-page book, but I've had some people read it in 2 days because it's quite an easy read. So I've put the basics of social psychology here so people can benefit.
Who do you think are the people that should most read this? You were mentioning earlier you think young women should read it. Is that who your best audience, your biggest audience is?
I would say so, that I wrote this for everybody. So I wrote it in a language that is easy to read for pretty much anyone, and it's interesting to read for anyone who, of a different level of, say, education or demographic. I've had all kinds of demographics read it and say they related to it. So that's one thing, that you will find yourself relating to many of the things in this book, and that's how it's written, so that people can be able to see this in their own lives and then be able to improve their daily, their daily path, their journey through their social
But you were
world.
giving me statistics earlier about
So
people
yes, so let's
suffering
go
from
back
mental
to
health issues.
the purpose of the book was definitely to elevate the younger person, because the younger the person is, the easiest it is to shape them for the future.
Right.
So the older we get, the more we get ingrained into our habits, and then it's quite harder to change. So younger people right now especially are under a lot of influences that are destructive, and it's really no secret, right? Like,
Yeah.
you can look at just the
But you
music
had a
videos.
statistic of mental health right now.
Right,
What was
so
that?
I found something very interesting, just kind of looking at the different statistics, and there's lots of statistics in the book too, but why I wanted to get this out to the youth. So the parents listening, this book, your youth is going to love this, because I talk about Drake, I talk about how his astrological sign affects his operations and his business, stuff like that. So anybody can really read it, and young people would love this. And it'll help them navigate through the very tough interactions that they have right now, because there's so much peer pressure, there's so much that influence from music videos, from the over sexualization of youth at this moment is just wild, especially with their how they can access so many things online. So one thing that was very interesting that I found is that recently, in the last couple years, youth females are twice more likely than males to be hospitalized for mental health. And there's been a steady increase in use of mood and anxiety medication in the past 5 years, especially for young females. So that is very interesting. Why is that happening, right?
I think it's gotten even worse during COVID.
That's exactly it. Because of the disruptions of daily routines, there's fewer physical activities, which
and they're
both
stuck
young
at
women,
home. They're not meeting their friends. They're not socializing.
They have poor social support. So now we have parents really struggling to get their lives in order, and and then the kids are mostly left to them.
So if I gave this to my daughter, what do you think the key things that she would learn from this book would be?
For a young girl, she would learn how to avoid getting manipulated. Mm-hmm. This is, I think, the most important thing, because young women out there are they think that everybody's their friend. And they desire the attention, the validation, the social proof of others that they are somebody
Isn't
cool
that what Instagram is all about?
desired.
That they want to have Instagram-worthy posts so that they can attract likes.
Exactly. And so I am hearing
There's this word that my daughter described about someone's thirsty. They're thirsty for likes, so they post some sexualized picture on Instagram just because they're thirsty for likes.
Yes, exactly. So it's getting worse and worse, and we're hearing so much. Now, again, this is another statistics. Ontario is actually the highest for human trafficking in Canada, and it involves a lot of young women. If you look at different clubs now in Toronto even, everything's a stripper party now. So it went to, before it was kind of like a normal party for everybody. Now you see so much more of that prevalence of young women being used as props for parties, basically. And there is actually only one male stripper. We're getting off topic here, but I think it's still on topic.
So manipulation is one of the
yes.
big
So the
keys.
manipulation comes into play where we have this over-sexualization. In say music videos, we have female artists who are almost naked on the videos, and even when you listen to the radio these days, it's 5 p.m. I'm in the car, I'm listening to the radio, and even though there's a beep blurred out swear words in the song is about selling sex, for example, right? And it's 5 p.m. dinner time, and maybe people are driving.
Okay, so manipulation is one. What else would be the key learnings?
So manipulation is huge because it comes from so many different parts of society.
What are some other key learnings?
The other thing is self-actualization. So to be able to have a prosperous and happy life, you have to find what you're good at and what your passions are, what your purpose is really in this world. What are you going to bring into to benefit the world around you, and that way you will feel that good sense of
Everyone
self.
wants a sense of meaning.
Exactly. You will feel like you have a meaning in the world. And because people look for that outer validation in the social media now, with the pictures, with the looks, with the outer shell of their being, which is just the vehicle that gets us through this lifetime. But the spirit inside needs to be fulfilled with self-actualization. So with something that you are finding that you're good at, that you're passionate about, and that you will focus on in this lifetime.
I think
and
it's
many people,
something that you've got to find. You've got to figure out what your passion is. And
yes.
So many people get stuck in dead-end jobs, dead-end careers, never figure out what it's all about. In the last couple of years, we've had this thing called the Great Resignation. I do think that one of the benefits of COVID, ironically, is we were all sent to our bedrooms and had to have a time out and think about what we really wanted in life. And some of us realized we didn't want to commute all the time, and some of us realized that we didn't want to work in jobs.
That's true.
And started entrepreneurial ventures, and that time out, I think, was ironically helpful.
It was helpful to many. Some it sent into obviously a darker path, which was like more addictions, more of
LCBO revenue went way up.
Yeah, and the desire for that social connection, right? And that's another thing I talk about in the book. There's so many different studies and theories, but one of them is very interesting, is that there was a study done where people were put in a room and they were made to kind of hang out with like a little machine where they were given this little thing to kind of play with. It was boring, very boring. I think it was the boring task study. I'm not exactly, don't quote me on that one. But, and the researchers were measuring how people were reacting alone in the room. So basically that little machine was, I think it was like a shock or something. It was administering a shock to them. So it wasn't very pleasant to play with. But they didn't want to spend even a couple minutes alone. it was a problem for people mostly. So what psychologists found was that people would rather do something harmful than spend some time alone in a room. So people are not made really, they have to kind of force themselves to be okay with being alone.
That's interesting.
And maybe, as you're saying, what you've noticed is that maybe we needed it as a society.
Yep.
And those who took advantage, those who knew how to kind of just fall back and just be like, okay, I'm going to get to know myself. I will do some meditation. I'm going to read some books. This is a perfect time to get to know who I am, to connect with my spirit.
Right.
And my purpose. There are, adults who still don't know, who still wonder about their purpose in life, and that's why the further we go, the more diversion.
Self-actualization.
Yeah.
Finding your purpose in life. Being aware of and wary of manipulation.
Yes.
Is another. And can you give us one more of the learnings
Something
one
very
would get
important
from your book?
Okay. Let me look at my notes. What I would say is extremely important is being able to entertain conflicting ideas at the same time. So we have cognitive dissonance, and that is a very popular theory. That's something that many people actually know about. It's one of those theories that is just kind of like a celebrity theory from social psychology. And cognitive dissonance is when you have two conflicting thoughts. So say somebody smokes cigarettes, they love the cigarettes, but they also know that the cigarettes are dangerous and destructive to their health.
Yep.
So they know the two conflicting things. They like them and they dislike them. And there's a problem that is very uncomfortable to the mind, and it's just a discomfort, mental discomfort.
Yep.
So what my book teaches people is to be, or in politics right now, everything is against, everything is polarized, right? So how do we deal with the polarized ideas all around us that are so extreme, and people don't know where to fit themselves because they say, well, I like this, but I don't really like this, but then this group likes that, and I have to kind of pretend that I like that too, because then they'll look at me weird. And so what I'm teaching through the book and through the process of reading the book, which is kind of like a course in its own, where you will learn how to entertain conflicting thoughts, conflicting ideas, with a more greater comfort and ease.
I think that's wonderful, because I think one of the biggest problems we've got today is that people live in echo chambers. They're only listening to one media. You're either listening to Fox or Sun Media or Rebel Media, or you're listening to CNN and CBC, and we end up being in two completely different solitudes and echo chambers, and one ends up believing one set of facts and one believes another set of facts. And there should only be one set of facts. You can have two opinions, but there should only be one set of facts, and I think that that's fantastic. So the book again is Person to Person. It's Nika Domi. You can get it on Amazon, or you can follow Nika on Instagram and order it directly from you. Thank you so much for joining us.
NikaDomi.com.
Really appreciate it.
I invite everyone, and let's talk.
I think this has been helpful, because social psychology really is a topic that I think a lot of us are intrigued by and need to understand a little bit better. And Nika has got an inside look at social psychology, and has struggled through for 2 years trying to write her book, and it's a fascinating read. So I recommend it to you. That's our show for tonight. Thanks for joining us. Nika Domi, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.